Hi, Chuck.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. Good morning, everybody. This is my guest, Chuck Fazio, out of Chandler, Arizona. Chuck, recently, I want to welcome you, first of all, to my Overcomer series.
Mm.
Um, the reason I got excited about Chuck, there was a lot of, excitement about Chuck's brokerage coming over to EXP. He had the biggest brokerages, one of the biggest in the country. It
Mm.
was about 850 agents, right?
About 900. Yeah.
Okay, close to 900. And
Yeah.
just to kind of, for anybody who's not into real estate and watching this, and the large offices that you see, most of them in your city, the big, names that people know of, usually have maybe 2 to 50. If they, max maybe
Mm.
400, 900 is it's crazy. That's why his numbers, he produced over $9 billion in sales, no biggie, with his wife Angela, of course. And I did want to say, so the reason I wanted to invite you here, first of all, you and your wife are so cute. So the first interview I saw was, a big EXP announcement, and oh, these people are pretty great. And then I saw another interview with the both of you, and I just hearing you just kind of talk a little bit about your story and your background. And then the third time was a charm. The third time I saw you, and I was like, that's my people. Like, I've got to talk to him. I've got to get him on here. I want to know all the story, all of your story, and I want to share it with everybody else because, as that's our testimony. Our life and our trials are
Yeah.
our testimony.
Yes.
And how, and you have a great testimony. So let's get started. Chuck Fazio, baby Chuck, Queens, New York, right? Your dad's from the Bronx?
Dad's from Brooklyn
Brooklyn.
and grew up in Queens.
Okay.
And yep, that's where I lived most of my life. Gosh, I'm getting close to being half of my life out here now. So I'm in Arizona.
Well, see, I'm from Tucson, Arizona, born and raised.
Yeah, I
So I
see
am
that.
familiar with Arizona. And I still haven't even visited, but I've always wanted to move to New York. I knew I was going to move and I was going to be an actress. That was the goal. And instead I was mom and went the mom route, military wife. Um, but, but New York, so I'm like, what makes somebody move from New York to Arizona? So maybe I'm skipping ahead a few steps, but, kind of explain your journey there.
Well, so I'll start more from the beginning, so you would
Okay.
people would pick up and understand why I made the move. Is I grew up in Queens and I got married fairly early and to my first wife, and I started working. I worked at the post office during the day. I would say that's my real job, and started bouncing at clubs at the age of 18. And it was my first taste of nightlife. And and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed working at the clubs, and I got paid to pick up girls and get into fights and drink, and
Every young man's dream.
yes, crazy. So that's what I did um, early on in my life, and then I started to work in different type of clubs, and so so people could understand my life because my life's an open book. I started working strip clubs for the mafia, and really started to get a taste for power and fame and money, and started to get into drugs. So I was using drugs, and then I was selling drugs, and really going down a bad path in my life. And my mind was kind of warped because when you're around that environment, that's all you think life is about,
Yeah.
is those type of people, where you don't trust nobody, and everything's high paced and constantly strung out on drugs. And and I was married at the time and had two little kids. So my life was kind of hell. And I was in that lifestyle for, gosh, a long time, probably 12, 13, 15 years.
Wow.
And in the interim, my brother had moved out to Arizona. And that was back in 95, I think. And I never thought I'd ever leave New York. I mean, most New Yorkers don't think that. And but my life was so bad, and it was so strung out, and caught up with the wrong people. Then my parents bought a house out in Arizona, and my sister bought a house out in Arizona, and I was fairly close with my family. You know, we're a New York Italian family, and I didn't have a good marriage, and I got to a point where I always say it was a God thing, even though I didn't know God, that He brought me to my lowest. We were jumped one night in the club, and we were set up by, it was actually the guy who owned the club, that my buddy actually had us jumped just for the fun of it.
Wow.
And it was when I really started to go question who God was, and said, really, is this what my life is about?
That's what
And
one of my questions I wanted to ask was, where was rock bottom? Because typically that sucks when your friends turn on you. You kind of question, are you really my friend? I would do anything for you. What are you doing? But I mean, there had to be a series of stuff leading up. Like, when did you decide this is the life? I'm partying, I've got women, I've got all this, this is, that high false self, that I call it, that ego part of ourselves that we tell ourselves in our brain that this is success, this is being it. When did it start crap? I mean, what were the big events where you're like, enough?
well, I think the big events was, my life was so hectic. I would work the clubs at night. So I'd work from about 10 at night till about 6 in the morning is when I'd get home. I was usually high every night. And then I'd have to be up at 8 o'clock to work my day job. And so I was so strung out. And when you're doing that for so long, I would fall asleep at the wheel during the day, at night, constant fights at the club and constantly strung out. And I guess it was just wearing on me. And like I said, I think the part that really hit was that night that we were jumped. And it was done as a joke, but it really wasn't a joke to me. And, I've watched, some of the people I work with get killed. And it was just a tough lifestyle. And I was constantly chasing the high, constantly chasing the women. And it was hell. And I think, I look back and I go, when you say, what was rock bottom? I don't think there's a definitive moment. I think there's a process. But looking back, it was also, I think, in God's plan to go, all right, enough is enough. And so that's when I decided to try to make it work with my wife at the time, and moved out to Arizona, try a different lifestyle.
So what was your life like when you first moved to Arizona?
So I didn't have a job. I'm one of those type of people. I'll figure out how to make ends meet, and I'm just a hustler. And so when we moved out to Arizona, I said I was going to get out of that lifestyle, the club lifestyle, and where I'd make my money. And but what happened was I wind up moving one of my girlfriends, one of the stripper girls, out from New York to Arizona. And
so your mindset was still on making it work with my wife by being in Arizona, and my girlfriend will still come with me.
Yeah,
there's still that mindset. Okay.
It's horrible. It's
okay.
I like to preface that people, I'm not, I hate my past. Like, I look back and to me it's surreal. I'm like, was that me? Was that my life?
Right.
And people go, do you regret anything? And I go, I'm not happy what I did to people,
Right.
But if I was to say I regret my past, then I would be saying that God was never in control.
Yeah.
And God obviously had a plan.
And without those
And
lessons, you wouldn't be who you are today.
right, exactly. So although we try to justify stuff in our minds as human beings, God, God's will is always for his good and his glory. And we don't understand why. And we're not to question why.
Yeah.
But from a fleshly standpoint, I'm not proud of who I was. And the ironic thing is my wife now is good friends with my ex-wife, and
I love that.
she's very close to us, and we'll do anything for her. And it
Love
is
that.
one thing that stays in the back of my mind is I don't ever forget what she put up with for my kids.
Yeah.
That I would never, I would always take care of her.
Yeah.
So
I love that. So, okay, so you're at the place, you have your girlfriend there, and you're doing that, and you've got, where was the wake up call in that? I mean, was it the marriage? Like, where did you say, okay, maybe this part isn't working either?
yeah, it was, I wound up getting back into working in the clubs out here in Arizona, which is a big difference to working clubs in New York. I used to say it was like Disneyland out here.
All right.
But and moved in with my girlfriend, so I wound up leaving my wife on her own here in Arizona with her family still in New York, and she's really close with her family, and she stayed in Arizona so the kids would be around their dad, and
Wow.
she didn't have to do that, and
Yeah.
as a matter of fact, I don't. Most women wouldn't have done that because I was a dirtbag.
Yeah.
So we back in the lifestyle and constantly in fights with my girlfriend at the time, and my brother brought me to a non-denominational church, and I was raised Catholic. So religion is different than a relationship with God.
Preach. Yes.
Yeah, and I was brought up in a religion, constantly in condemnation. You're bad. You're not worthy. And he brought me to this non-denominational church, and it was weird. It was strange. It was like people were happy and joyous and singing and praising God. Of like,
Yeah.
wow, I go, look at all these Jesus freaks. But the Spirit of God started working on me. And I asked for some miracles, like radical miracles. I said, testing God.
Yeah.
If you exist, do this. If you exist, do that. And he did. He did things you can't even make up. And he brought me to my knees so one day I was in church and sitting in the front row off to the side with my brother. And God sent me messages that you can't make up. And
Share like a big one. That was just.
What's that?
What was like a big one?
Okay.
One is like.
So here's the big one. So I was living in my house, in my parents' house, with my girlfriend, the stripper girl, and we were broke. And we were living in one of my parents' rooms in their house. And it was Christmas. And it was Christmas Day. And now, mind you, let me set this up for you, because there's a lot behind this, but I'll try to give you a Reader's Digest. She, back in New York, she lived with a guy. I was married, I lived with my wife, and she lived with a guy who knew who I was based on I worked the club where she worked at. And he had confronted me one day in New York because he found out I was hanging out with his girlfriend. And he had confronted me and kind of wimped out. It's the best way I could put it. So set that stage up. This was her boyfriend in New York.
Okay.
She moved to Arizona. She's with me in Arizona for over a year now. She don't get along with her parents. She doesn't really talk to nobody in New York. She doesn't get along with most people. And we're living with my parents. And this was back in 90, this is probably 99.
Okay.
End of night, Christmas of 99. And my parents had an unlisted number. They were in Arizona. So Christmas Day comes around and we fight all the time, just put it that way. And we wake up and I said, you know what? I think we should go to church today, Catholic church. And she goes, no, I think I'm going to go get a flight and go back to New York and see my parents. And I'm like, you don't talk to your parents. Like, I thought it was weird. Mm-hmm. And she says, well, that's what I'm going to do. And I said to her, I go, you go back to New York, stay there. Don't ever come back. So I went to church. Mm-hmm. Okay. And after church, they have candles in the back of the church,
right.
the Catholic church. And I stopped and I kneeled down and I lit a candle and I prayed. And I said, God, I'm miserable. My life's miserable. I said, give me a sign if I should be with that girl. Make it crystal clear to me.
Yeah. So
I get home, and what do you think? Do you think she's there or she's not there?
I think I have a big imagination. I don't know. So let's just go with she's not there.
She's there.
Okay.
She's still there.
She's still there.
Okay, now watch. That's not the miracle. Here's the miracle. So about an hour later, we're sitting in the room that we're in my parents' house. And my father walks in with the phone. And he says, Danielle, you have a phone call. And we both looked at each other. I'm like, who's calling you at my parents' house? Like, nobody has that number. And she took the phone and she kind of like hid it from me. And all of a sudden I hear her cursing this person out, going, don't have an effing call here again. How did you get this number? Blah, 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 and hang up. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, who was that? And she goes, that was my ex-boyfriend, the guy from New York.
Yeah.
The phone rings right back and I grab it. And she's like, hang up the phone, hang up. And I answered the phone and he goes, yeah, I'm looking for my girlfriend, Danielle. And I lose it on the phone. And now, mind you, he had no idea that was me that answered the phone when he called. And he stopped right away. And then all of a sudden started putting one and one together. And he said, wait a minute. He goes, you're the guy from New York. He goes, we're being played by this girl. He goes, ever since she left for Arizona over a year ago, she told me she was going to school out there. And I had no idea she was living with you. That's my girlfriend. And I'm like, whoa. So now, mind you, till this day, we still don't know how he got my parents' phone number. So it's not like he tried to find me and my name. He had no idea. He thought she was just living in Arizona.
Yeah.
So she was playing us. So I'm like, wow. I go, is that a message from God? I mean, you can't make that up.
Yeah.
So what do you think I did? I did nothing. Fast forward 6 months. So now we're in June. Okay. My life's hell. It's miserable living with this girl because she convinced me that she only kept him on the side if it ever didn't work out with me and blah, blah, blah. So 6 months later, my brother convinces me to go back to the non-denominational church. So she's in Arizona. I go to the church. We're sitting in the front row. And the pastor starts talking about miracles. And he says, that we today go, how come we don't see miracles like we did back when Jesus was around?
Yeah.
And I am not kidding you. I ain't making this up. So I'm off to the side, and the pastor stops and he points his finger right at me, looked right at me. He goes, because when you ask for a miracle and God sends you the message, you chalk it up as a coincidence. I sat there and I just started bawling.
Yeah.
He looked, it was almost as if God was speaking to me.
Yeah.
Okay?
He
So I
was.
said, the idiot that I was, I said, all right, God, send me one more message. Should I be with this girl? That was Sunday. Monday, so remember 6 months later from that first incident, Monday I go into work at the real estate office, and there's a package in my mailbox. And I get the package, and all there is a micro cassette tape. So I had to run to the store, buy a recorder so I could play what's on the tape. And do you know what it was? It was a conversation of her with him. He recorded her on the phone of her telling him how much she loves him, how much she can't stand me, that I beat her all the time, which is all false.
Yeah.
And you go, you can't make that up.
Yeah.
It's not a coincidence, the way God moved. And that was, I was done, and threw her out, and started seeking God and asked God to change my life and give me somebody I could be with forever, one woman. And that's when Angela came into my life.
I love that. How did you meet Angela?
In real estate. So I was on a real estate team, and I was broke. So I was a miserable person. And there was like about 20 people on the team, and she had come in. It was her first day in real estate. And so I know the team leaders, I'm friends with them. And if you read my book, you know it's coming. And but for those out there, I'll tell you the story because you can't.
Well, tell everybody your book. I didn't know you have a book. So what is your book?
Oh yeah, Mastering Your Real Estate Career.
Okay.
So me and Angela wrote that, and it's partially about our life being broke in real estate and how we became successful and how God works. And yeah, so she walks in. She had platinum blonde hair. She's actually from Colorado.
Okay.
She's an ex-Denver Bronco cheerleader.
Hey, go Broncos. I like her even more. She's got an amazing smile. I can see it. She's awesome. She's beautiful.
Yep, you're going to have to meet her one day.
I'm going to have to meet her.
Yeah. Yes. So she walks in. She's got long platinum blonde hair. And I'm like, wow. Like she walks past, and the husband and wife who ran the team knew me, and they're laughing because they knew I'd react like that. So the meeting started, and in the meeting, and I'm still a degenerate. I don't know God yet. I'm going to preface that. So in the meeting, the wife writes the sales on the board, and she happened to be on a diet, so she was losing weight, and I yell out to her in the middle of the meeting. I said, I'm not going to say her name, but hey, so-and-so, I go, are you on a diet? And she turned around and she was all happy. And she goes, I am, Chuck. She goes, you can tell. And I said, yeah, I could see the board now.
Oh.
And, yeah. You know how much of an ass I am.
No.
And so the first words ever my wife spoke to me is, so here's this beautiful blonde sitting up front. She spins around like the exorcist. And in front of everybody, she goes, what are you, an asshole? And she like ripped me a new one.
I love that those are her first words to you.
Yes. Love at first sight.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was it.
That was
it. I love
you know what's
that.
funny? I was a womanizer degenerate, and I pursued any woman I wanted to pursue. She is the only woman that I didn't really pursue. And we didn't we didn't like each other at first. And I always say that shows right there that God chose my wife.
Yeah.
And yeah, we've never been apart ever since we've
Yeah.
been together. And we
I
do
love,
everything together. We work
I love,
together. Yeah.
so anytime you go, when I see you talk, I love the way you banter back and forth. You just
Oh,
like,
yeah.
you go together. You're just so
Yeah.
cute together.
I joke around, I go, she's a female me.
Oh. No, she's from Colorado. You said what part?
No, she's from all over. She's been in many, many states, but she was in Colorado for quite a few years. She was right outside of Denver, um, Littleton,
Yeah.
Aurora. I don't
Right.
know that
Both.
area.
Yeah.
And yep, that's where she spent quite a few years. She was a teacher, and like I said, she was a Bronco cheerleader. Um, she even has a Super Bowl ring. So
I love that.
yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So what was finally the point? And you said something, and I don't want to forget this thought. So it's one of the things that came to mind. You talked about, it was a different kind of hustle, but hustling and, where your mind was and, all that ego and being fascinated with the quick life and the money and the drugs. And as you know, in our industry, there's a lot of that in our industry.
Yeah.
So how do you that's another reason I kind of wanted to bring you on here, because there's a lot of, when you can make money and all of a sudden you're making thousands and thousands of dollars selling a house and another house, and you've got, what do you tell, how do you mentor, your 900 agents, I'm sure you get some young ones that come in, how do you influence them and kind of, get them to see the light? I guess they have to be ready, but to see that life isn't about drugs and partying. There's more to it.
Yeah, I think the transition that we try to work with agents is where I'm tempered is through the Word of God. And when the Spirit got a hold of me, I radically transformed, radically. And it doesn't mean I'm perfect. I'm just as much of a sinner as I am now. For them, we're just sinful natured beings, and
Yeah.
until we go home. The difference is when you have the Spirit of God is, I feel like I'm more sinful now than I used to be. But if on a fleshly level and you compared both lives, you'd be like, oh God, no, you are more sinful here. The difference is I'm aware of my sin now.
Yeah.
God brings it to the forefront.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, we got to a point of being broke. We know what it's like to be broke. I mean, literally broke. We were ready to move in with my parents, to making millions of dollars, to that type of success. And the one thing I always pray to God almost daily is, Lord, rid me of my pride and ego. Humble me. Do a work in me. I never want to lose the sight of the value of money and to help someone.
Yeah.
To me, one of the biggest things, I have quite a few pet peeves, but one of them is I hate people who are respecters of people. So when I used to run the strip clubs, celebrities would be in there all the time. And people just go gaga over every celebrity that comes in here. And I don't look at any individual any different. I don't care if you're making millions or you're a bum in the street. You're a human being to me, and I treat you the same. And I expect the same to me. And what's crazy, because I don't look at it, me and Angela don't look at it this way. The more and more success we have, the more people idolize us. And I hate that. I don't hate that because I look down on them. I don't want to be treated any different than anybody else. And I never want to lose sight of that. So if somebody calls me for help or whatever, I mean, yeah, I'm a busy person. Sometimes I get caught up and I can't do things. Like, for example, when you reach out, I'll do anything for you. I'll help you out however I have to. And there are people that'll say, oh my gosh, I can't believe you would do that for me. And I'm like, what do you mean for you? You're one of God's creation. You're just as valuable to me as anybody else.
Yeah.
And we live in a society that doesn't do that, that puts people on a pedestal, and the people that get put on a pedestal act like they're better than everyone else.
Yeah.
And I hate that. I hate it. So when it comes to success in real estate, I treat everybody the same. I'm a hard worker. I'm one of those people that the whole joke is sometimes you would never know if I was the owner of the $1 million business or the janitor of the company, because I'm in there, I'm doing the labor, I'm cleaning bathrooms if I have to. I'm not one of those people that dress up. I don't own any ties. I don't own a tie. And the only reason why I have some suit jackets is if I have to wear a suit jacket somewhere. But you'll see me in jeans and a t-shirt all the time. That's just who I am, and I'll never change. And Angela's the same way. So you can't lose humility, and you find it through the humbleness of understanding your creator is so much bigger than you, that
Yes.
we're peons for
Yeah.
none of us to boast ever.
Yeah. The way God keeps showing himself in different ways and different times, different depths in my life. And I think one of the new things I heard my grandma say, when I was young, she was talking to me, when I accepted Christ as my Lord and Savior when I was 8. And there's different phases in my life of that. And I also went to Catholic school and non-denominational, and kind of, I've been back and forth, and I'm happy where I'm at. I'm in a really good place with my relationship with God. But my thing was understanding love on a different level. So my journey right now is love, divine love. And one of the things my grandma used to say was, you're perfect. You're beautiful. You're in God's image. And as a little child that never computed, and what is perfect, and we're not perfect. And I don't ever try to be perfect. I don't care to be perfect because it's different for everybody,
Yeah.
And so what is it? And it finally hit me, and such like a load. It's like, no, we are all perfect spirits because we're extensions of God. It had
Yes.
nothing to do with the physical.
Yes.
We're all, we're born into these crap bodies, that they're defective and they're sick.
Yes.
And our brains and our mindset and our thoughts are taught all these different things. And when we get out of our own way and out of our own mind, we can return to that place of being. And it's a practice to stay in that. I have to always, I'm yeah, from where I come, and much like you, I don't hold my tongue very well. I say what I think. I've gotten better about picking my fights and when it's worth it and when it's not. And I don't wear, we have a mutual friend, Jay Kinder, and he taught me something years ago that it's been invaluable. And I'm not going to be the effect of somebody else's effect. I'm not letting them, and that translated to me to, excuse me if you don't like cussing anybody, but I'm not wearing anybody's shit. That's their shit, and I'm not going to let them put it on me. So if they're having a bad day and they're running off and my intention is good and I haven't done anything offensive, I'm not going to own all of your energy. That's, So anyway, so that's a practice for me to just kind of retrain my mind and look at people that I don't want to look at and and see God in them still. And know that they're acting out of their programming, out of their false self. And we can't be mad at them, because they are where they are. We just have to continue to be an example and pray that they find that love in themselves, that they can heal themselves.
You're right. And we all have that struggle. But the more you said something really important, the more you think that and the more you live that, the more God will refine your mind to seeing that and being cognizant of it, because you're right. We falter all the time. I'm very competitive. I still have my nature when I worked for the mob,
Yeah.
I have that nature ingrained in me, but it gets curbed through Christ. But there are times that I got to fight it. And
Yeah.
Angela challenges me all the time. She'll always say, "Pick your battles."
Yeah.
And that line goes through my mind every time. So when I say to myself, "Pick your battles," it makes me stop and process: is this battle worth the fight?
Right.
And most of the time, it's not.
No. Yeah.
And that's why I do choose who I'm around. I love being around positive, like-minded people. Doesn't mean you're going to be positive all the time.
Yeah.
God, no. So,
Yeah. But are they
yeah.
trying? Are they making the effort? Are they trying to move
Mhm.
forward? Are they considering, constantly trying to be a victim? Or are they constantly trying to pull themselves
Yeah,
out?
yeah,
So,
exactly. Me and Angela have a thing. We go like this when we're being a victim. We go like that to each other, and we actually do it sometimes when you put it in their face, and it doesn't go over well sometimes.
yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah,
Just being super hot and having your husband go boom.
yeah. When you get
Excuse me.
two drivers. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, I have just a couple more questions for you. I'm
Okay.
going to pull up my little notes. Wanted to make sure I asked a couple little token questions. We talked about your rock bottom. We talked about when you turned your life over to God. What do you, Chuck Fazio, what do you want your legacy to be? What is your impact in this world that you want to leave behind?
My legacy is my why. And I tell every person, you need to have your why in life. Now, whys can change, depends on what part of your life it is.
Right.
But my big why never changes, it's constant. And my big why is to glorify Christ in everything I do. I give him praise and glory for everything. And so, what does my legacy want to be? I love this phrase because I say when I go home, I consider myself a soldier for God. That's who I am. I want that to be my legacy. That man was a soldier for God.
I love that. That's a good legacy. Who in this world had the most influence on you? Who was a person that was just like total made you left turn?
You know what? I've gotten that question before because I also hear a lot of people ask that question. One thing you'll know about me, and me and my wife say the same thing all the time. We are such straight shooters. I'm not going to say something because that's the normal thing to say. For example, people say, "Oh, at the beginning of the year, do you write down your plans?" And I don't. I don't do any of that. Now, to answer that question, and you're going to find this really strange, there is no one.
Okay.
There's no
I
one.
don't find it strange. I understand that.
I'm a loner. I've always been a loner, and there's not one person in my life. I know some people go, "Oh, my dad," and I loved my dad, but my dad didn't really influence my life. Now, there's things I do that are just like what my dad does, but no, there's not one person. If I was to say what mostly influenced my life right now, it's the Spirit of God, period.
Yeah, love that. That's the answer. I cry when I hear this song. It's so ridiculous, but Whitney Houston has that song. I used to sing it when I was a little girl, "Greatest Love of All."
Yeah.
And she has that line, "I decided long ago never to walk in anybody's shadows," and it talks about I decided, or about being your own hero, something like that. I can't think of the words right now, the lyrics, but at least if I, at least I live as I believe. And it's that song, the words of that song. But that to me when I was little, because same thing, I didn't have anybody to look up to really, or to admire.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, well, I always had to look at who do I want to be? Am I enough? Am I so we talk about weaknesses. That was mine, learning that, you're enough. You're just as you are, sinner and all, imperfections and all.
You are.
So I get that, not having anybody and kind of being like, all right, being your own champion.
Yeah.
Soundtrack of your life, Chuck Fazio. There's a movie. We're making a movie about you. What is your theme song?
Wow. What is my theme song?
Yes, theme song.
Man, that's a stumper. That is what I have to process. I don't
Everybody
know.
always has
I
that song that you
I can
turn
tell
up.
you what it wouldn't be. It's not Highway to Hell. Okay, I'll give you one. It's my old roots. I love 70 rock. I love old rock songs. I think my theme song would be by Black Sabbath, Iron Man.
Okay, all right. So that's a good song. And what is your quote? Most like quote that you live by? If there's going to be a quote on your headstone.
I love answering this one. It's not a quote. It's a scripture verse. Proverbs 27:17. As iron sharpens iron, one man sharpens another. I live by that. That to me is so powerful.
I love that. I see that in you. I see
Yeah.
that in how. Then that's why you had such a big brokerage and why you had so many people under your leadership, because you have to be a good leader to have that many people. So you had to help sharpen a lot of people.
Yeah, and if you really, I challenge you on this, dwell on that. Like dwell on that scripture verse and dwell on it where you immerse yourself, where you're watching two pieces of iron sharpen something, sharpen each other. It's not just, oh yeah, we look out for each other, we help each other. When you really, really visualize iron sharpening iron, that's not a what's the word I'm looking for? That's not a mild occurrence. That's very abrasive, that's impactful.
Hot.
Yeah,
Sparks,
there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. It's not it's not a soft clash. Iron and sharpening iron sometimes could be confrontational. There's a word, and I can't think of the word when two things interact like that. It's explosive, but I can't think of the word. But ponder iron sharpening iron. That it's a very strong sentence.
Okay, I love that. Well, thank you, Chuck. It's nice to meet you. It was so nice to talk with you. I appreciate you being my guest.
We're going to get to see you in person one day.
We're going to have to. I need to get down to Arizona soon.
Yeah.
So I still have
you still have family in Tucson or no?
Yeah.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. So born and raised. My kids, two of my youngest are down there.
Oh, really?
When my health went bad, I had to take them to their dad. I said, you have to finish this out, because I couldn't take care of myself. I couldn't take care of them. Oh. So he's finishing out that last couple years of them. So I need my babies. So I need my babies. But I've never been through Chan. I passed through it a lot, growing up there on my way up to Prescott from Tucson and back and whatnot. So we'll have to definitely meet up. And if you guys are ever out here too, I'd love to meet Angela.
And what part of Colorado are you in?
Colorado Springs. Okay,
so that's south more?
About 55 miles south of Denver.
Okay.
So not far. So
right.
Maybe we'll go to a Broncos game or something.
There you go.
Right.
Well, it was a pleasure. Chatting with you, and look forward to keep on connecting.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Chuck.
All right. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.